How does an election year affect the real estate market? Can we expect something to change or be different this late 2020 because of the upcoming election? Well, let's dive in to look at real data, local Santa Clara County data, to understand what really might be coming ahead of us. Hi, I'm Theresa Wellman with HomeownerExperience.com, your local San Jose, California realtor. So today I'm really going to dig into the data about past election years, looking at Santa Clara County data from 2000 all the way up to current, and I'm going to compare those election year numbers to the years before and after to see if we notice anything going on differently in an election year with the real estate market. And of course, this is going to be local data, and I'll give you some predictions of what I expect to happen here in 2020, as well as whether it's a good time or easy or bad time to buy or sell. So stay tuned for the real data and those predictions. So why am I doing this video? Does an election year really affect the housing market? Why even ask this? Well, over the 15 years plus that I've been in real estate, I've always heard that buyers and sellers cool down during the presidential election years. And why is that? Well, I suppose it has to do with people being uncertain about the new president and what effect it'll have on taxes and the interest rate and the U.S. economy as a whole. So it makes sense to say that or to ask this question. So I figure a lot of people think it's wise to just maintain a holding pattern until that next president is locked in place and they know how to make a move. So is this really true of our local Santa Clara County market? So I'm going to dig into that data, look at inventory changes, the number of sales, and price changes. So where is the Santa Clara County market today? That's really important to understand. Let's look at where we are first. So if you look at relative to the last 20 years, which I'm going to break down this data and really dig into it, like I said, for election years, if you look at this yellow line of inventory, we are very low historically. But what you will notice is that inventory is cyclical and typically will drop and fall. Sales typically drop and fall as well, and prices therefore also typically soften a little and fall as well. So let's dig in here to the inventory a little bit more to understand the recent years. The June 2020 inventory came in at 914. That's 44% less than what it was in 2019. And typically inventory is going to peak in June or July or even a little later. You see this bar here is the middle of the year, 6 months. And this year it was later, this year was later. Here it was July, again July. 2017 was a strange year. We peaked in April and just inventory decreased drastically. And 2018 took a while to recover that really low inventory and didn't peak until October. So, but generally inventory is going to drop in the fall. So what about sales? Well, sales in June 2020 and 2019 were very much on par with each other. About 840 single-family homes in Santa Clara County that month closed. In July, we were up to 832 already, and this is not quite the end of July as I'm recording this video. So I expect July to be a strong month as well. Now, if you look at these little green bubbles that I put in, the red outline are election years. So we don't have much data, of course, for this year, but we can look back to 2016. And what you see here is that there was, come July, just a really flattening of sales. Typically, we see a more gradual decrease if you look at the recent years. And so maybe that's something to say about an election year. We'll dig into the actual numbers here in a little bit. But what you'll also notice is the last 3 years were much lower sales those months. And if you look 2013 to 2017, it's kind of like a scale higher where it was much closer to the 1,000 range. The last few years have been a little bit different. That's why I'm going to compare not election year to election year, but rather the year before and the year after to the election year to see if we can pick up any trends. So what is typical for an election year? So I'm looking back here at several elections, late 2000, late 2004, 2008, 2012, 16, and now 2020. So as I mentioned before, traditionally in the fall, inventory drops, sales drop, and the prices typically decrease a little bit as well. But what about the actual numbers? What kind of actual numbers can we see when we compare this information? So let's look at the numbers here of inventory. Yes, inventory drops in the fall, but is it different in an election year? Well, you'll be interested to note that I did find a slight trend, that the election year inventory decreased more than the prior year. So if you look here, the prior year before the election year, the decrease of inventory from October to December, there's no trend really from one year to another, but the election year dropped even more than the year before. And the dark yellow is actually the biggest decrease for that election year, before, after, and the actual year. And so some years it continued to decrease. So here was 27%, 37%, then 40% decreases, right? 45, 51, 55. So not drastically changing, but slightly less each year. Now the sales, also there's a slight trend. If you look versus the prior year, the number of sales is always up in an election year. Interesting, right? I didn't know whether to expect that, but that is kind of contrary to what they were saying, that people kind of sit by the sidelines and just cool down while the election's going on. So not here in Santa Clara County. The buyers seem to get more active, actually. But the year after, that first year the president is in office, sales do seem to go down. There's one exception in 2008, which was just a very different year anyway because of the Great Recession. So, can we expect the latter part of 2020 to be influenced by the upcoming election? Well, I think it's very possible, but there are some interesting numbers here, right? If you look at the year before 2020, which was 2019, from October to December, the inventory decreased 61%. As you can see, for the year before an election, that is by far the most drastic drop that we've seen. So is it possible for the inventory to drop even more than the 61%? Since we said that's a trend, it drops more in an election year. Well, if July was 949 homes on the market, and if we keep that, say, flat or steady until October, then that means we could end the year at only 570 homes. That's more than the 61%. But is that a realistic number for the area? Well, you might not be surprised that recent years we've seen lower numbers than that. In 2017, we were all the way down to 271 homes in December, which fueled that crazy 2018 spring. But also in 2019, we had a very low inventory of 453. So yes, if we get to 570 or lower, that is possible, and we would continue on the trend that in an election year, the inventory actually tends to be lower. So what about sales? In 2019, the fall sales cumulative were 2,188. And the average since 2010 has been 2521. So 2019 was a little bit lower. But of course, it is possible for sales to increase over the prior year, because that seems to be the trend here of the year before an election year is lower sales than the actual election year. So looking at our average being much higher than the year before this election, it is, yes, again, possible that the number of sales will increase at the end of 2020. So now what about pricing? Of course, everybody wants to know, is there a price trend to an election? Buyers and sellers just want to know about that, of course. So in the year of an election, you'll see there is not much difference. Well, I looked at a 6-month price change and a 3-month price change, looking all the way back to July to December and then comparing October and December. As you can see, there's not much difference except for 2008. There was a huge change in that time frame because that was a Great Recession and the market was falling apart basically starting in October. So there was the big, I guess it fell apart before if you look at this data, right? There was the numbers really decreased in July, August, and September, and then kind of settled out by October. So the only other anomaly is 2004 that was actually up, and it held all the way through that fall election season. But most of these elections had a modest price decrease the year of the election. Now, how does it compare to the year before and after? Well, let's look at our predictions again. So I do predict that the inventory is going to drop even lower this fall, even though we are already at record low inventory. I expect sales to stay pretty strong, and I think interest rates are really going to be fueling that. And prices will likely soften a little bit, but that wild card is going to be the low inventory, because if our inventory gets to extremely low numbers again, we might be seeing supply and demand imbalance, and therefore price bidding again, and maybe prices will not soften as much, or potentially they go up a little bit. It's hard to say, but it is possible that prices go up year over year, because in December 2019, the average price was 1.496 million. And here we are in June 2020 with the average price of 1.689 million. So we're already up 12% from December. So even if we did soften a little bit, say 7 or 8%, which is kind of what you see in this range here of 6-month decrease, right? Taking out this anomaly of the Great Recession, we would still be up year over year, right? Because we have a 12% lead right now from December. So in conclusion, is it easy to buy or sell in an election year? Can we expect some changes? Well, definitely. I just went over the predictions. I do expect some changes. Prices to soften a little bit, inventory to definitely drop, and sales to increase. So if you're a seller, low inventory is always good because that means less competition. And the increased number of sales is good because that means buyers are out there really shopping. And if prices soften, well, I'd say it's kind of neutral for a seller because you're still up year over year. But yes, it's not as good as selling sometime in the summer. Now buyers, well, low inventory means you're going to have less choices. So it's going to be harder to probably find the right house. And if there's an increased number of sales, there could be an increased number of competition or other buyers out there, meaning potential multiple offers. And if prices soften, well, that's to your advantage, of course, because then it'll be likely more affordable to buy in the fall than it would be next spring. So I hope that answered a lot of your questions, and now you really know when people talk about whether the election affects housing market or not, you know locally the truth. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Theresa Wellman, your San Jose local realtor who discusses real live data each month. To set up a consultation to review your plan or specific situation, please do visit my website, and you can sign up for all the market trends updates that I send. Next week, I will be posting the monthly market trends update for San Jose. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel for all things San Jose real estate. Thank you.